know who's a great guy? Mike Carparelli. If you go to carparelligutars.com, he'll send you some of the best guitar components money can buy. Or he'll build you an absolute soulmate of a guitar. I play a Carparelli. You should too. I want you to have this video for free, but if you've got $2 or $3 lying around and you can kick them over here, it helps me take time from my real job and do more of this. So find the link below, go to PayPal, select only the least of what you can afford, and just know that I'd really appreciate it. All right, let's drill down on the chorus fill, which is happening here on the 13th and 14th bar. Let's review what we have before we look into replicating it. Right, so we have a simple snare fill going on here, and then we have one tom hit over here, and then the cymbal crash. So let's first take a look at the snare. We've got a 3 and 4, but then in the middle we have a 16th note, the 3 and So if I change this to 16th, it'll show up on the bar there. Okay, so we're going 3 and 4. And if you look at the velocity ranges, they do vary. So the middle note is pretty quiet, just to create the relative velocity effect here, so that the second one sort of pops a bit more, and this one is not too dominant. And that'll add a little bit of, well, a natural feeling to the snare taps. And then the tom tap is over here. It's pretty hot at around 90, so that'll stand out hopefully well enough. Then we've got a cymbal crash a little louder at 61, because this is a change to the chorus and I'm starting to build the arrangement a bit. So I'm getting a little louder on the crashes, and I would like the contrast between the chorus and the verse to be quite stark. So I can create a little bit of noise there, and then that will clean up when the verse resumes, and it will create a big difference in sound. All right, let's go up to our new track and recreate this. So again, we're going to dissect these loops a bit here, do a little bit of surgery. All right, let's place our notes. Okay, and then we can deal with the velocity ranges. I think this was around 50, this was around 40 something. Actually, I'm going to start that at around 60. I'm going to try that with a 30 velocity range difference, just to see if this note still comes out. And then we want the last note to pop a bit. And I forgot to mention that this note is actually a different part of the snare. All right, so if you look over here at the names of the drum parts, there's a snare rim shot. So there are different samples for different types of hits. And that can be a good choice for adding some variations in the sound. And this one is going to stand out a bit because that rim shot has a higher end, and it's got the crack of the rim, so you can hear it a little louder. I can't see that wanting that too heavy, it'll stand out a little too much, so I'm going to try it and see how that works. And then we've got our mid-tom hit. I'm going to try it again at around 80 and see how that sounds. Again, I can bolster the tom hit with a light kick. It's kind of like a feather tap of the kick drum, right? And then we have to make our cymbal crash. I'm going to change that to the right crash just for fun. And I'm going to leave it at about 60 and see how that sounds. Okay, let's give this a listen. Actually, I think I would like this to pop out a little more, so I'm going to raise the velocity on the rim shot. Actually, I would like this first hit to stand out a little more too. Sounds good. Let's hear it in context and see if our choices are working for us. In context, it's sounding a little too overdone. I'm going to reduce the snare as a group. There we go. That's a little more tasteful, I think. You may disagree and leave it where you like. That's totally up to you. If we're happy with the way that turned out, we can move on to the change back to the verse. All right, let's listen to the change from the chorus to the verse and just review what we have. All right, taking a closer look, we have alternated the snare and kick in this area. So instead of coming in on the 2 and the 4 for the snare, we're now coming in on the 1, 2, and 3. And then we're alternating with the kick on the 1 and 2 and. And then we have a 3-part tom run here from the high tom, mid tom to low tom. And you can see that the velocity is graduating, so it's building a bit. And we're also accentuating that build with the kick here from a low, very low velocity up to a little bit higher. And that's to create a building feeling at the end of this fill, because we're going from the chorus to the verse, kind of like the feeling of building towards a crescendo and then letting it release on the first beat of the next bar. You know, as an arrangement, going to foreshadow a little bit more energy coming in the bridge. Okay, so let's replicate this in our track. So as usual, just going to do a little bit of surgery here. All right, let's start placing our notes. I'm not changing the velocity on the snares at this point, so I can just drag them out. Same thing with the kick. And the toms are going on the 3 and 4 and 4 and parts of the bar. All right, let's deal with the velocity on these. All right, we'll give that a try and see how it sounds. Okay, let's hear it. All right, we're not going to be using the ride cymbal anymore, although it's not to say that you can't leave it. Just keep in mind it's not really possible for a drummer to play all of these things at the same time. Maybe it is if they're very clever, or they got 8 arms, but we'll see. But you can do things that are unrealistic in MIDI. That's okay. There's no rule against that. If it sounds good, it sounds good. Pretend you have a percussion section. But if you leave the metal there, it's going to conflict a little bit with the clarity of the tom hits, so you may want to leave it out. It just depends if it's working for you. Now that I'm thinking about it, I can actually do something like this, which is just building up the sound on the edge of the ride, and that will help to just make a more of a wash in the background. That's a stylistic choice. Okay, let's hear that in context. Sounds okay. I can see these three toms sounding a little better with a little more heat, so I might just ramp them up a bit. Okay, fair enough. We'll leave that for now, and because you get the idea, we don't need to finalize this, and you may be hearing something completely different. And of course, you're welcome to experiment with those things. So let's move on to the bridge section.